You think power lies in love returned, in words sent, in good morning texts typed with trembling hope. But Niccolo Machiavelli would call that blindness. Men ought either to be indulged or utterly destroyed, he wrote, not wooed, with emojis or slain with silence. Every time you text first, you kneel, you announce need. You place your throne in their hands. This isn't connection, it's surrender wrapped in a blue bubble. This video is not about playing hard to get. It is about never being hard to possess. It's not a game, it's the war beneath the surface, the strategy behind perception. Machiavelli believed that those who seek love as validation lose both. If you've ever wondered why they pull away when you show care, understand this. Power repels weakness like a flame rejects cold. This is your recalibration. Welcome to silence as a weapon. Welcome to the death of the first text. They told you it was mutual, that if you cared enough, they would too, that if you showed up consistently, texted first, checked in, stayed available, something inside them would awaken, that love would recognize love, that effort would be returned like a favor or a promise. But Machiavelli would laugh at that because he understood what most people never do. Loyalty is rarely about kindness, it's about leverage. Power doesn't respond to effort, it responds to advantage. You don't keep a throne by being nice, you keep it by making yourself necessary, and those who chase are never necessary. Every time you text first, you're not building a connection, you're offering submission. You're not initiating, you're revealing. You become legible, predictable, powerless. Machiavelli wrote, men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. For everyone can see, but few can feel. They see your pursuit, they don't feel your worth. You imagine that love is a mirror, that if you give, they'll reflect it. But mirrors only reflect what stands still. Chase them, and all they see is your back. This is the illusion of reciprocity, the belief that affection follows effort, but what it really follows is perception, and in that arena, appearances matter more than truth. You thought texting first was caring, they saw it as confirmation. You thought consistency was strength, they saw it as supply. You offered reassurance, they pocketed power. It is not their fault. They respond exactly as Machiavelli predicted. People are loyal to what serves them, not what honors them. If your presence becomes expected, your absence loses value, and once something loses value, it becomes disposable, irreplaceable only in theory, replaceable in practice. This is where most people lose themselves. They confuse consistency with consequence. They believe showing up guarantees staying power, but Machiavelli knew to maintain power, you must become the question, not the answer, the mystery, not the message, the fire that warms but never burns for free. In modern dating, the myth of balance is a trap. Equal texting, mutual effort, shared vulnerability, these are ideals, not strategies. In practice, one always gives more, and the one who gives more is always asking, what are you really asking when you text first? That they don't forget you? That they still care? That you matter? Understand this. Asking is a performance, and performances are judged, not cherished. Your instinct to text first is not love, it is uncertainty. You want reassurance, you want control. But Machiavelli would warn you, certainty is the first thing a ruler must deny his people when they are unsure of where they stand. They stay alert, they stay invested, they stay afraid to lose you. When you eliminate that fear, You eliminate your power, and this is the paradox. The more you try to secure love through effort, the more you make it insecure. The more you offer, the more you announce your dependence, and Machiavelli believed dependence was death. Because when your happiness relies on another's reply, you are no longer sovereign, you are a subject. The illusion of reciprocity convinces you to keep trying, to keep proving, to keep texting first, believing that fairness will follow. But power does not play by rules, it plays by perception. And perception says, if you chase, you are beneath. This is not cruelty. This is the architecture of influence. Scarcity commands attention. Availability breeds contempt. You do not become desired by being present. You become desired by being missed. The more visible your need, the more invisible your value. So what do? You break the rhythm. You remove the offering. You stop applying for a position you once owned. You allow silence to do what words never could. Shift the narrative, because in a world of noise, the one who speaks less is always feared more. Machiavelli would never advise you to give more in the hope of balance. He would tell you to take less until they ask why, to vanish. Not as retreat, but as revelation. Let them feel your absence like a sudden storm. Let it rearrange their comfort. The illusion dies the moment you stop feeding it. Emotional equity isn't about fairness, it's about focus, and focus follows fire. Not the flame that burns politely, but the one that disappears when touched. Let them reach, let them question, let them wonder where your need went. Because in power and in love, the one who wonders waits. They told you silence meant something was wrong, that if someone didn't reply, it was rejection, that if you didn't reach out, they'd forget you. But that's not silence, that's fear talking. Silence is not absence, it is a presence. So powerful, it doesn't need permission. It does not beg to be heard. It commands attention by daring to say nothing to most. Silence is emptiness, a void to be filled with words, explanations, apologies. But to Machiavelli, silence was the art of kings. It is much safer to be feared than loved. He wrote, and nothing evokes fear faster than your unavailability, because silence does what words cannot. It forces reflection. It births doubt. It makes them sit with themselves and ask what part of you they no longer have access to. This is not the silence of retreat. It is the silence of strategy. It is not absence. It is elevation. You do not send that message. You do not check in. You do not chase. And in doing so, you force the other to wonder, where did you go? What did they do wrong? Who are you becoming without them? That tension? That storm behind their quiet curiosity? That is gravity. You've shifted from pursuit to orbit. Machiavelli believed power was not found in declarations, but in control over perception. Silence to him was not a mistake, it was a maneuver. He understood that true influence isn't loud. It's haunting. Those who speak too much expose their hands. Those who text first reveal their position. Those who rush to fix, to explain, to check in, they fall from the throne of control into the dungeon of dependence. But those who can sit in silence without flinching, they become the storm on the horizon, not dangerous in the moment, but unforgettable in the mind. You are not ignoring them. You are elevating yourself beyond reach. You are reminding them that your presence is not a right, it is a gift. Machiavelli would never waste power trying to convince someone to care. He would withdraw just enough to create fear, just enough to destabilize their certainty, just enough to make them come closer, unsure of what they missed, terrified of losing more, because distance not dominance, keeps people loyal. They fear what they can't predict. They chase what they can't hold, and so your silence becomes your throne, a place from which you watch, not beg, where your absence weighs heavier than your presence ever did. Let them feel your silence like a shadow across their comfort. Let it haunt the corners of their confidence. This is not ghosting. This is not punishment. This is power pure, unspoken, untouchable, and when they finally reach for you, they won't be sure if it's love, guilt, or fear, that confusion. That is leverage, because in this world, the loud are forgettable, but the quiet, the strategically quiet, they live in minds longer than memories. Silence is not rejection, it is repositioning. You are not the message anymore. You are the question mark they can't delete. You told them everything, how you felt, what you feared, what you hoped this could become. You called it communication, vulnerability, honesty, but Machiavelli would call it a tactical error. You believed that if you gave them your truth, they would give you theirs, that if you showed them your soul, they would cradle it carefully, but you forgot the first law of power. Never expose your position unless it secures your victory. Transparency without leverage is not intimacy, it's confession, and confession always implies guilt. You told them too much. You made your mind a window, hoping they would admire the view, but they studied you like a blueprint, measured your weaknesses, noted your dependencies, then walked away with your map and left you standing in your own ruin. Machiavelli wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. If the people closest to you weaponize your words, you're not loved, you're being surveyed. They don't keep you close for comfort. They keep you close for access." This is the modern delusion, that oversharing is strength, that if you're raw enough, real enough, open enough, they'll understand. But understanding is overrated. Control is not Machiavelli never asked to be understood, only to be obeyed. He believed that truth has value only when it bends perception, only when it shifts power. You give away too much, thinking it will build trust. But trust built on exposure is not connection, it's imbalance, because the moment they know everything about you, they hold the higher ground, and in emotional war, higher ground is dominance. They don't need to argue with you. They just need to remember your last breakdown, your last pleading text, your last late night. Vulnerability sent in desperation. They replay your weakness like armor, and now you are predictable in Machiavellian terms. Unpredictability is a fortress, mystery is a crown, and silence, the kind that hides your exact thoughts, is the final weapon when you share too soon. You convert your power into proof, you beg them to validate what you feel, but Machiavelli would say, what must be validated is already too weak to command. You don't ask them to see you. You make them wonder what they're not seeing. Transparency in strategy is never offered. It's negotiated. You show your hand only when the outcome is already secured. You speak only when silence would cost you more. You reveal only when the revelation itself becomes a trap. Otherwise, you remain quiet, shadowed, unreadable, because they cannot control what they do not understand. This isn't emotional manipulation. This is emotional insulation. You do not bleed in front of spectators. You do not cry to those who benefit from your pain. You do not confess to those who have not earned the weight of your truth. You are not cold. You are calculated. There is a difference. And if they ever say, "I wish you'd told me how you felt," understand, What they're really saying is, I wish I had seen your weakness while it still served me. But you're learning now that not every truth is sacred. Some are strategic, some are saved, some are never spoken again because a secret, not revealed, is still yours to control, and in this world, what you control defines who you become. You think they're ignoring your message, but what they're really ignoring is the performance inside it. Every text you send, every carefully crafted response, every delayed reply to seem casual, none of it is invisible, and all of it is calculated, but not by them. By you. You believe you're showing value, but Machiavelli would say, you're leaking it. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. And when you appear too often, too available, too eager, they never feel the weight of your absence because they never had to earn your presence. This is the slavery no one talks about. The slavery of performance, where attention is currency, and you're overspending to keep what you should have made. Them invest in modern dating teaches you to market yourself, to brand your charm, to signal your worth like a street vendor selling illusions. But royalty never advertises, and Machiavelli knew those in power don't explain their value, they embody it every time you reach out first. You're trying to remind them, hey, I'm still here, still interested, still worth choosing. But reminders are only necessary when something is at risk of being forgotten, and things that can be forgotten are not rare. The psychology is brutal, but simple. If your presence costs nothing, it means nothing. If you're always available, you're never desired, only accessed. Desire doesn't chase consistency. It chases scarcity. It burns for what isn't easily touched. It aches for what resists the urge to be owned. You think you're being loyal. They see you as predictable. You think you're being honest. They experience you as desperate. You think you're being loving. They interpret it as routine. To Machiavelli, this was never mercy. It was miscalculation. To give what has not been earned is not generosity. It's self-erasure. Become less, not because you are, but because they no longer have to wonder. They don't wonder what you're thinking. You already told them. They don't wonder if you'll reach out. You always do. They don't wonder if they're losing you. You never leave. This is the tragedy of overpresence. It dissolves your impact and dilutes your mystery. You are performing value like a street magician, hoping someone will applaud. But power doesn't perform. It withdraws. It waits. It sets terms when diamonds are mined. They're not hung on display for everyone to touch. They're hidden, polished, guarded, because their value is not in how often they're seen. It's in how impossible they are to replace. And you must become the diamond, rare, selective, unreachable, without worth. This means less explaining, less offering, less trying to be understood, more space, more silence, more strategic absence. They should earn the next conversation. They should wonder what you're thinking. They should feel the distance and ask, where did they go? That question, that doubt, that's where power begins, not in being chosen, but in becoming unignorable. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He believed that rulers fall not when they are hated, but when they become common, and nothing becomes common faster than someone who's always available. So stop proving your worth and start protecting it. Become what is not shown easily, what must be pursued, what cannot be summoned with a screen tap, because once you stop performing value, you become it. You say you just want closure, but that's not true. You want them to tell you why they left, why they pulled away, why your name turned cold in their mouth, why your presence became something they could mute. Without guilt, you tell yourself you want peace, but what you really want is access. One more message, one more answer, one more chance to be remembered. Machiavelli would see this for what it is, a disguised attempt at return. He would not call it courage, he would call it capitulation. He wrote, "He who becomes a master of a city accustomed to freedom and does not destroy it, may expect to be destroyed by it." In emotional terms, if you don't shut the door completely, the war never ends. It only mutates. Closure is not clarity. Closure is permission, a way of saying, can I still matter to you even now? But Machiavelli never begged to matter. He made himself essential or disappeared. You believe that closure will free you, that the truth will heal you, that if they just explained themselves, the pain would make sense. But pain doesn't need to make sense to stop. It needs to be outgrown, and that requires a shift so few are willing to make. You must be willing to never know. This is the fallacy, that understanding their motives will repair your worth, but your worth was never lost in their silence. It was only misplaced in your obsession with decoding it. They may never tell you why they vanished. They may lie if they do. They may not even know themselves. And still none of that matters. To chase closure is to hand them the map to your internal peace. You say, explain what happened, but they hear, I cannot move unless you carry me, and no one respects what begs to be carried. Machiavelli believed emotions were not to be indulged, but weaponized. He saw clarity not as healing, but as leverage. So ask yourself, what does closure do for you? Does it remove the silence? No. Does it rebuild the bond? Rarely. Does it stop you from remembering them every night at 2 a.m.? Not for long, because closure isn't a door they can open. It's a door you have to burn down yourself. Is not weakness. This is withdrawal with precision. You don't exit the battlefield begging for understanding. You walk off covered in ash and let the ruins explain everything. You never will let go of the hope that they'll make it right with a paragraph. There is no paragraph strong enough to resurrect. Respect. Closure keeps the rope tied around your neck, and every time you ask why, you tighten it. This need to know, to be validated, to be given a final word. It's not healing. It's dependency wearing a mask. Not seeking truth. You're delaying detachment. But there's a colder truth, and it will save you. You don't need closure from the one who hurt you. You need conclusion from yourself. You need to decide, without permission, that this is where it ends, not because they said so, but because you don't beg for explanations from people who refuse to offer presence. Your value is not restored in answers. It is reclaimed in silence. Machiavelli would not wait for words. He would reposition, rebuild, reinforce. He would know that the longer you chase explanation, the longer you remain beneath the hand that withheld it. You wanted closure, but you never needed it. What you needed was the strength to walk away without applause, without understanding, without proof that you mattered. Because the moment you do that, you matter too. Yourself more than they ever could, and that is where control begins. They remember the version of you that begged, the one who wrote long paragraphs in the dark, trying to explain your worth, the one who asked if they were okay, then asked again, the one who lowered their voice just to be heard, and was still ignored. That version of you still lives in their mind, not because it was true, but because you let it linger. But Machiavelli would remind you, truth is irrelevant if it no longer serves power. A wise prince should never keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interests. To him, perception was everything, not the facts, not the past, only what they see now and what you make them question you. Don't fix an old image by explaining it. You erase it by becoming unrecognizable. You don't apologize for who you were. You outgrow it in silence. Let them sit with an outdated version of you while you build a new one, just beyond their reach. This is not deception. It's evolution with purpose. You not lying. You're withholding the closure they assumed they were entitled to. They do not get to keep the same version of you after they treated it like it had no weight. And so, you withdraw, not in anger, but in redesign. You become cold, not out of spite, but because fire that is too warm becomes background heat. Taken for granted, expected, forgotten. You leave, and in your absence, you do what words never could. You transform. They thought they knew you. They thought your kindness was permanent, that your softness was default, that your availability was a trait, not a choice. But now they check their phone and nothing arrives. Now they wonder what happened. Now they rethink every message they didn't answer. Now they sit inside the silence they used to ignore. Machiavelli believed that people respond not to what you are, but to what you appear to be. This is the game now. Not honesty, not redemption, narrative control. You don't send the message, because the unsent message is louder than any explanation. You don't clarify who you've become, because mystery is worth more than transparency ever was. You don't fix the past, because in strategy, the past is not correct, it's replaced. They should not remember the person you were. They should be haunted by the person they didn't wait to understand. You are no longer the echo in their inbox. You are the question they can't phrase. You are the shift in energy they feel when they scroll back and realize you stop trying. Reputation in this world is not permanent, it's programmable. You don't plead for them to think differently. You present nothing and let the silence fracture their certainty. Because here is the Machiavellian law: the more undefined you are, the more dangerous you become. They don't fear you when they know you. They fear you when they can't read you. You are not the person who begged. You are not the paragraph. You are not the one who tried to hold on. That version of you was temporary. You are now the absence they underestimated, the silence that rewrote the narrative. Let them wonder who you are now. Let them regret the version they mistook for weakness, and if they come back, they won't be coming back to the same person. They'll be meeting the one who doesn't explain, who doesn't chase, who doesn't perform. They'll be meeting the ghost, the myth. They call it ghosting, they call it avoidance, they call it rude, but what they never call it, what they fear calling it, is power. This is not ghosting. This is the final move, the most deliberate silence, the most precise strike without a single word. Machiavelli wrote, "Men rise from one ambition to another. First, they seek to secure themselves against attack, and then they attack others. But you're not attacking. You're doing something more terrifying. You are disappearing on purpose, or not storming out. You're vanishing like smoke. No warning, no announcement, no final statement, because the final move in emotional war is not confrontation. It's removal, not blocking, not posting, not screaming into the void to prove a point. Controlled withdrawal is colder than that. It is regal. It is surgical. You do not slam doors, you leave them slightly open. So they feel the draft of your absence every time they pass by. This is the moment they realize the rope they've been tugging was never tied to anything solid. Only your patience, only your allowance. You pull that rope back, not to win them, but to remind yourself they were never holding you. That's the illusion. They thought they had access, but all they had was your decision to stay. And now, the decision has changed. You don't exit to punish. You exit to reposition, not because you're bitter, but because power doesn't explain its silency or not choosing absence. You're choosing elegance, and when they reach out, because they will, they won't be reaching for you. They'll be reaching for the version of you they never expected to lose. They'll search for the pattern you broke, the rhythm you stopped playing. They'll replay the last message, re-examine their last response. They'll wonder, what pushed you into silence? Let them. That's the point. Let them fill the void with their own imagination. Let them create ghosts out of your quiet, because fantasy is more haunting than fact, and Machiavelli believed perception held more power than truth ever could. He who does not detect evil in its beginnings does not deserve to master it. You saw the signs, the inconsistency, the devaluation, the micro-abandonments, and now you're ending the cycle before it resets again, before the drama is dressed as romance, before you're back in the loop you swore you'd outgrow. Controlled withdrawal is the coldest form of self-respect. You don't do it because you hate them. You do it because you finally understand. Your presence was the gift they misread as permanence. This is the final act of sovereignty. You don't need their reply. You don't need their explanation. You don't even need them to feel guilt, because you're not there anymore to monitor their response. You're not playing the role. You've left the stage entirely. They can call it silence, but silence is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of something they can know longer access. They won't remember the last words you said. They'll remember that you said nothing, no final plea, no retraction, just silence, sharp as frost, final as fire. This is where you reclaim your throne, not by being loud, but by being unreachable. Controlled withdrawal means you don't even let them know the moment they lost you. You let them feel it later, when you're no longer reacting, when you're no longer waiting, when you've rebuilt without informing them. And if they come back, they'll return to a different landscape, a version of you sculpted in shadow, colder, quieter, more deliberate, not angry, just beyond. This is not detachment. This is strategic abandonment. This is the moment your absence begins its work, because in emotional warfare, the final weapon is always restraint, not noise, not retaliation, not revenge. Restraint. Let them wonder, let them guess, let them scroll through the ruins of what they had and whisper to themselves, they didn't even say goodbye. They won't understand it. That's fine. Machiavelli never asked to be understood, only to be obeyed, and the version of you that obeyed their carelessness? Gone. You are not running. You are repositioning, and from now on, you move in silence. You used to think love was about effort. Now you know. It's about perception. You used to text first. Now you understand. Power waits to be summoned. Machiavelli would not advise playing games. He would advise becoming the game. Your new silence is not bitterness. It is boundary. It is not fear. It is focus. You no longer offer clarity to the ungrateful, nor comfort to the disloyal. You don't explain. You reposition. You don't ask. You withdraw. That's the game now. Let them reread your last message and wonder why it was the final one. Let them realize they were speaking to someone who has since changed form. Let them sit in the emptiness they carved and call it silence. Machiavelli would say, "There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others." You are not postponing power anymore. Let them wonder where you went. Silence is your legacy now.